Brothers and sisters, this is not an ordinary story. What you are about to hear is something that heaven intended for you to hear tonight. It's no coincidence that you're here. It's not an algorithm error, nor a simple click. You were called for a reason. On November 6th at midnight, something will happen under the red light of a blood moon. A sign, a warning, and also an opportunity. The Virgin Mary spoke, and her voice, soft but firm, left a message that will change what we believe about the times we live in. "Prepare yourselves," Ella said, "for the sign will be seen by all, but understood only by those who still listen with their hearts." For months now, prophets, astronomers, and believers around the world have been talking about the same thing. Something is coming. A phenomenon that seems natural, but has a much deeper meaning: the purification of the human soul. I am the messenger. And although my hands tremble as I write these words, I must tell everything I saw and heard, because the Mother of Heaven asked me to. On the night of November 3rd, when the clock struck 11:58 p.m., the wind stopped. The silence was so dense it seemed to envelop the walls, and that's when the light changed. A red line as thin as a thread of fire crossed the sky from east to west. It wasn't a shooting star. It was the announcement. Mary appeared enveloped in a white glow, and in her hands she held a rosary that burned like the sun. His gaze was not one of fear, but of compassion, and behind her the moon, an immense, living sphere, began to slowly turn red. "Tell them to listen to me," Ella said. "Tell them not to be afraid, but to be prepared, because the days that are coming will be testing, and faith will be their shield." The words were etched into my mind, one by one. And as she repeated them, the air filled with a deep sound, as if the sky itself were breathing. I felt like time stood still. The birds stopped singing. The dogs began to howl, and a feeling of something immense, something that no human being can fully comprehend, descended upon the earth. From that night on, the signs multiplied. In Mexico, a mysterious light was seen over the mountains of Puebla. In Colombia, a girl claimed to have seen a woman dressed in light who was crying for the world. And in the United States, a priest interrupted his mass upon hearing a voice saying to him, "The sky is preparing, the moon is changing color, and humanity doesn't understand." 3 countries, 3 signs, 3 warnings that converge on one date, November 6th. But beware, this is not just a message for them, it is a call to the whole world. Because the Virgin spoke of a universal night, an hour in which hearts will be put to the test. As the moon rises, many will feel a shudder, a disquiet they won't know how to explain. Others, however, will feel peace. The difference between them will be faith. And you who are listening to this now, you have been chosen to know what the rest will know too late. Maria spoke of 3 signs that will mark the approach of the event. 1 in the sky, 1 on earth, and 1 more in the hearts of men. Each one will be visible, but not everyone will be able to interpret them. The first sign, she said, has already begun. And when she said it, her voice broke. "It is a sign of indifference," he continued. "When humanity sees suffering and no longer feels compassion, they will know that night is near." Since then, the world has changed. The news, the conflicts, the divisions, everything seems to be leading us to a point of no return. But all is not lost. She also spoke of hope, of light, and of an invisible refuge that will open for those who believe. Those who have faith, he said, will find comfort in their homes as long as there is prayer. And he uttered words that made me tremble. "The house where my name is spoken with love will be illuminated from within, even if night covers the whole earth." That's why you're here, because heaven is calling you to prepare that spiritual refuge. It's not about superstition, nor about fear, but about living faith, because the blood moon of November 6th will not only be an astronomical phenomenon, it will be a mirror of the human soul. And now, before we continue, I ask you for something simple. If you believe that the Virgin Mary still intercedes for us, write Amen in the comments. Don't do it out of habit. Do it as a sign of faith, as a testimony before heaven that you are listening to His voice. Because what's coming in the next part, it is the revelation of the first visible sign that is already manifesting itself. A sign that scientists are trying to explain, but that only pure hearts will understand. And when you meet her, you'll understand why November 6th will be remembered as the night the heavens spoke. That night, after hearing the words of the Virgin Mary, something inside me changed. I felt that the air itself was full of hidden messages, that the sky was breathing in a different way, and although it seemed like just another night, I knew that the time of signs had begun. From dawn on November 4th, the skies began to behave strangely. Astronomers spoke of unusual activity in the atmosphere, a kind of magnetic energy that was altering the Earth's light fields. But those who were paying attention to Maria's message knew that it wasn't something scientific. It was spiritual. The Virgin had said it clearly. The first sign will be seen in the heavens, and men will try to explain it with their words, but the soul will know that it is not natural. That prophecy began to come true within hours. On social media, thousands of people posted photos of red clouds forming cross shapes, moving lights over cities, and a strange glow appearing just before dawn. In some parts of the world, people claimed to hear a deep sound, like an echo coming from the sky. In Colombia, a woman recounted with tears in her eyes. I went out to the patio to pray and saw a white light that split into three. Each one went in a different direction, and in the middle, a shape appeared. It looked like a woman with her arms open. The media called it optical illusions, but the faithful called it the first warning. In the United States, in the state of Texas, security cameras captured a flash that illuminated the entire sky for exactly 33 seconds. Scientists called it atmospheric plasma. However, when the images were analyzed by believers, they saw something that no one mentioned publicly: the silhouette of a female figure in the center of the glow, with a light over her heart. That image was censored on several platforms, but those who saw it could not forget it. I myself received an email from a priest in Puebla, Mexico. His message was brief, but chilling. Brother, heaven has spoken. During Mass, a woman dressed in white appeared behind the altar. Everyone saw her. She said nothing. She just looked at the sky and disappeared. It was the same day the sun changed color for a few seconds. It was impossible not to notice the pattern. Each testimony agreed on three things: a white light, a female figure, and a sudden change in the sky. The three signs that the Virgin had mentioned seemed to intertwine in time. Meanwhile, observatories were reporting an unprecedented phenomenon. The moon, days before November 6th, began to show a dark band, a shadow that crossed its surface as if something were covering it from within. It wasn't an eclipse. There was no astronomical explanation. The scientists tried to silence the fact, but in the early hours of November 5th, the shadow expanded and the moon seemed to throb. Yes, to beat, like a heart. Several witnesses recorded the phenomenon and swore they heard a deep buzzing sound accompanying the pulse, a vibration that made the windows and bones tremble. That's when I understood. The moon was preparing to speak. The Virgin had warned me, the moon will be the mirror of hearts. When blood flows in the sky, the earth will tremble in the soul. And those words took on meaning when the clock struck 11:30 p.m. on November 5th. The entire sky changed color. The stars disappeared one by one. And in the midst of absolute silence, a red line began to sprout on the horizon. It was the prelude. The silent midnight announcement. Thousands of people in different countries began to pray at the same time without knowing it. It was as if an invisible force was guiding them to look upwards. In the villages, the churches were full. In the cities, people went out onto their balconies, and for a moment, everyone shared the same vision: a white light suspended in the air, just below the moon. Some thought it was a spaceship, others a weather signal, but those who believed felt their hearts burn. A young man from Colombia wrote on his social media, "I felt like someone was watching me from the sky. It wasn't fear, it was peace. But then my dog started whining, and the light disappeared. Since then, I can't stop thinking that something is coming." At that moment, I understood what the Virgin meant when she spoke of the inner light. That light would not only be seen with the eyes, but with the soul. The phenomenon was repeated time and time again in different countries. In Los Angeles, the light appeared right over the sea. In Bogotá, it was reflected in the windows of the buildings. And in Guadalajara, many swore they heard a female voice praying a Hail Mary in the wind. The entire sky had become an altar. The sky was announcing something, but few understood it. In my prayer that night, I asked for a personal sign, a confirmation that what I was seeing was real. And then a phrase came to me, clear as if someone were whispering it in my ear, "Do not fear, for what you see is not destruction, but awakening. Wake up." That word echoed in my heart. The Virgin was not announcing the end, but a purification, an urgent call to awaken the sleeping soul of the world. However, Ella also warned that there would be resistance. Said, "Many will mock, many will doubt. But when the moon turns red, it will not be the waters or the winds that are disturbed, but hardened hearts." And so it was. During the last hours of November 5th, tensions increased. The news reports spoke of a global phenomenon that no one could explain. Some governments ordered observatories to be closed, and in several temples, priests began uninterrupted vigils. Everything was leading up to the exact moment of midnight. I was looking at the moon from my window. Its color had completely changed. It was red, deep, vibrant, and on its surface I could make out a shape, a silhouette. She was a woman on her knees with her hands clasped. I felt a current run through my entire body. "She's here," I thought. "She is crying for us." Suddenly, an icy wind swept across the street, and the scent of incense filled the air. The lights in the house flickered, and I clearly heard a female voice, sweet but firm. "This is the first sign. Heaven has spoken. Prepare yourselves for what the earth will reveal." Then I understood that the sign from the heavens had ended, and that the next one would come from the earth itself. What was about to happen would not be a visual phenomenon, but a physical one, a real, palpable movement, a warning that would shake thousands of people and reveal the first country marked in the prophecy. But before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you believe that heaven can still intervene on earth, write Amen in the comments. Write Amen for yourself, for your family, for your country, because what you are about to hear could change the way you see the world forever. In the next part, you will learn about the second sign, the one that will not come from the sky but from the ground, and you will discover which is the first country that the Virgin Mary named in her revelation. A country where the earth will open up, not only to unleash its fury, but to reveal a hidden message within. Get ready, because what comes next, it's not just a prophecy. This confirms that November 6th will mark the beginning of the Great Warning, that the world has ignored for far too long. Brothers and sisters, as midnight approached on November 6th, something began to feel different in the air. It wasn't just the silence, nor the sudden cold that descended upon the villages. It was a presence. Something invisible, yet as real as the pulse of the earth. The animals began to behave strangely. The dogs howled, gazing towards the horizon. The birds flew in disoriented circles, and the most sensitive, those who still retained faith in their hearts, they said they felt a murmur in the wind, as if heaven itself were pronouncing a name that few understood, but everyone feared to hear. That was when the moon began to change its color. First, a faint shadow covered her. Then little by little, the pure white turned into a deep, burning, almost bloody red. It was as if the blood of the innocent of the world had risen to the heavens to bear witness before God. At that moment, thousands of people took to the streets. Some were recording with their phones, others were crying silently. In the churches, the bells began to ring by decision of the parish priests, who felt that something big was about to manifest. I, the messenger, was kneeling in a small chapel in northern Mexico, when the red light of the moon entered through the stained glass and illuminated the face of the Virgin. And at that moment, brothers, her expression changed. It was not an illusion nor a projection of the reflection. It was her. The Virgin Mary slowly opened her eyes, and from her image began to emanate a golden, warm, vibrant light. My whole body trembled. I couldn't move. I could only hear his voice, a voice that was not of this world. My son, listen carefully, because what is coming will be remembered as the night when heaven spoke to men. Many will not believe it, others will mock it, but those who open their hearts will recognize my call. The blood moon is not a symbol, it is a warning. The voice became softer, but deeper. She continued, 3 signals have been sent, and 2 have already been fulfilled before the eyes of humanity. The 3rd one will begin with blood in the sky and end with fire on the earth. I was trembling. I tried to ask, "What should we do, Mother? What does this mean?" And she replied, "Tonight the souls will be weighed. Homes that are not in prayer, they will feel the weight of the darkness. But those who call on my name in faith, they will see how the light of God crosses the shadows and marks their homes with protection." That's when the image returned to its original form. Silence filled the chapel. Only the faint glow of the red moon continued to bathe the entire altar. I went outside, still breathless, and I saw that the sky seemed to breathe. Clouds with strange shapes moved in circular patterns, as if something, an invisible force, were guiding them. In different countries the news began to appear. Reports of red lights descending on mountains in Colombia, photographs of a luminous shadow crossing the Nevada desert. And on the coast of Veracruz, fishermen claimed to have seen a woman in white who walked on water, leaving a bright trail in his wake. Everything coincided with the exact time, midnight on November 6th. And here, I want to pause for a moment to tell you something, brother who is listening to me. It's no coincidence that you've gotten this far. If your eyes are seeing this message, it's because heaven wanted you to hear it. Something within you, perhaps your soul, your intuition, or your pain, he has been chosen to awaken before the darkness completely closes in. Remember this. God's signs never come without a purpose. Nothing happens by coincidence when the sky turns red. While humanity celebrated, danced, and slept, the spiritual realm was preparing for the greatest battle in centuries. And although most men didn't realize it, the angels and demons were already on the move. That's when the testimonies began. A mother in Medellin said that while she was praying with her children, a white light shone through her window, and a voice said to her, "Do not be afraid. The blood in the sky is a sign of purification. Pray for those who do not believe." In Arizona, an elderly veteran recounted that he saw how a luminous shadow settled over his barn, and when he touched the wood, he left a cross-shaped mark. Nobody could explain it. And in a small town in the state of Michoacán, an 8-year-old girl fell to her knees in front of the moon and cried out, weeping, "She is sad. Mother is crying for the world." The adults ran towards her. Upon looking up, some claimed to see tears of light descending from the moon itself, as if the firmament were weeping. What was really happening? Was it an astronomical sign or a divine revelation, a simple coincidence, or the beginning of fulfillment of the oldest prophecies? The messenger, me, was still trying to understand, but deep in my heart, I felt that this was not just a phenomenon but an urgent call from heaven. Because, according to what the Virgin had revealed to me, that blood moon would be the beginning of a series of 3 sacred nights. in which the spiritual destiny of thousands of souls would be decided. And although many scientists tried to explain the crimson color with theories of refraction and atmospheric shadows, those who were spiritually awake knew it wasn't science, it was judgment. But this was just the beginning. Because what happened after that midnight, it was so shocking, so impossible to explain, that even the most skeptical were left silent. Something descended from the sky, a light, but it wasn't a star or a meteor. She was like a living pillar, seemingly seeking out homes marked by faith, and within that light a figure, a female silhouette with a blue cloak that moved as if it were breathing. Some fell to the ground, others began to pray. And in the air, a single phrase was clearly heard: "Time is running out, and the final sign will be given to those who still wait." That night, the whole world was divided between those who believed and those who mocked. But in the following hours, the sign would become visible to everyone. A forgotten prophecy written in ancient Marian manuscripts would return to the light. Because what was coming, it wouldn't just be a warning, it would be a demonstration. One that would mark the spiritual destiny of 3 entire nations. When the column of light disappeared from the sky, a profound silence covered the earth. Networks, news programs, and satellites showed real-time images of a red moon that appeared to be burning over the continents. But as the hours passed, the phenomenon ceased to be just a vision, and it began to be felt in the earth itself. I, the messenger, was observing the reports that were coming in from different parts of the world. In some places the air became denser, in others clocks stopped without explanation. But there was one point on the planet where the signs were clearer, more direct, as if heaven had decided to begin its message there. And that nation was the United States of America, the first of the 3 nations upon which the Virgin's announcement would fall. What I'm about to tell you is not the product of rumors or theories. These are documented facts, testimonies that the media chose not to publicize. Words that heaven itself allowed to reach those who still retained the light. It was November 6th, just after midnight. In various cities, New York, Dallas, Denver, and also in a small community in Ohio, something strange happened. People who were asleep began to hear the same sound, a kind of distant bell that resonated in their minds and hearts. A man in Houston tearfully recounted, "I woke up startled. I thought it was a dream, but the bell kept ringing. Looking out the window, I saw the red sky and above the moon, the silhouette of a bright woman. I felt a voice telling me, 'The faith that was forgotten will return from among the ruins.'" Another testimony came from a nurse in Chicago who claimed to have seen on the wall of his room a cross-shaped shadow that wouldn't disappear, even though the lights were off. She prayed, and the reflection began to shine faintly while her children slept without fear. In Washington, a group of people gathered in front of the National Cathedral, where the interior lights flickered for several minutes. Some believed it was an electrical fault, but when the clock started working again, they all showed exactly 12:06, the exact time when the moon reached its darkest point, and it was at that moment when the message arrived. I was live streaming, trying to guide those who were following my words, when suddenly the air around me changed. The scent of incense filled the place, and a warm breeze, completely different from the wind outside, enveloped me. I closed my eyes, and I heard her again, the voice of the Virgin Mary. "My son, now listen and share. The first country upon which the purification will manifest itself will be that where men forgot that freedom without God is slavery, where abundance became blindness and power in arrogance. That country, which once swore in my name, now he denies even the word that supported him." Her voice was firm, but full of tenderness, and he continued, "Those who live there will see signs in the heavens and on the earth. Nature itself will speak to them. Fire will touch the air, water will bring confusion, and hearts will be tested. Not punishment, son, but a call to repentance. At that moment, a tear fell from my eyes. I knew perfectly well who he was referring to. The first country was the United States, and immediately events began. That same morning in California, a slight tremor shook the coast. Hours later, in Florida, an unprecedented electrical storm lit up the sky with red flashes, as if the lightning were imitating the color of the moon. In Maine, witnesses claimed to have seen 3 lights descending over the ocean, forming a perfect triangle. The authorities didn't know how to explain it. But those who remembered the ancient prophecies understood. The sky was touching the earth, and it wasn't a punishment. It was an act of mercy, a last chance for a nation that had forgotten to look up. Because according to the revelation, the spiritual power of the United States had been sealed from its beginnings. Many don't know it, but the first settlers, upon arriving in their lands, they buried Bibles in the ground and offered the country to God. But over time, those roots were covered by noise, materialism, and arrogance. The Virgin Mary spoke of that. The enemy infiltrated disguised as progress. It took over minds, changed words, altered values. And now darkness advances over the cities, disguised as light, entertainment, and apparent freedom. I listened in silence, my heart burning, because he knew that his words were true. I could feel the pain in his voice. It wasn't a condemnation, it was a plea. Son, tell them there is still time. Let them pray. Let them return to me, because soon the heavens will open again, and the cities that do not bend their knees will know the weight of silence. That phrase shook me to my core, the weight of silence, as if even God withdrew his voice for an instant, leaving men facing their own echo. And then something happened that I will never forget. As the voice faded away, a light descended upon the map in front of me. It was like a golden ray touching the north of the country. First it shone over New York, then over the center, and finally stopped in the southwest at a specific point, Texas. The Virgin whispered, "From there will be born the first prayer that will break the darkness. A child will offer a prayer and heaven will answer, but it will be the sign for the world to understand that my time has begun." And then I understood. The first country marked by the blood moon would not be destroyed but purified. Its skies would turn red to remember the blood shed by the innocent. He still cries out for justice. The words were etched into my mind like fire. Where science dominates, faith will sleep, but where a single soul creates, the miracle will breathe again. That same night, thousands of Americans began to gather in silence. There were no sermons, no cameras, no music, only prayers. Some lit candles in front of their houses. Others wrote on social media, "Mary, protect us under your mantle." And it was then, at exactly 3 a.m., when a glow crossed the sky from east to west. It looked like a comet, but it wasn't. Witnesses claimed to have seen a female figure above the luminous strip with open arms and a tear of light falling from her face. News outlets called it an unusual optical phenomenon. But those who were spiritually awake knew the Virgin had passed over the skies of America. Not everyone saw it, but those who felt it will never forget it. That was the first sign, the signal that marks the beginning of the warning. The first nation had been touched, and what would come next would be even clearer and more painful. Because while the moon was still red, thousands of kilometers away, the second country was beginning to experience its own signal. And so began the call of the Mother. The first of 3 countries had heard his voice. The second one, however, was about to face a test that would bring his people to their knees. A nation where pain and faith walk hand in hand, where blood and gold mingle in history, where the mountains hold secrets that men have forgotten. That nation would be the next to hear the echo of the blood moon. November 10th dawned with an eerie silence. The birds weren't singing. The wind seemed to have stopped. The motionless clouds formed a grey wall on the horizon. In every corner of the planet, something, however small, felt out of place. Clocks seemed to tick slower. People, without understanding why, woke up with a feeling of unease in their chests, as if something enormous were about to happen. In Medjugorje, the sun rose with a reddish, almost blood-red hue. The visionaries who were still there fell to their knees. One of them, trembling, exclaimed, "She's here again! The lady comes dressed in sorrow." And then the sky opened. A light brighter than 1,000 suns pierced the atmosphere. It was not lightning nor a comet. It was a living presence. The clouds parted like a torn veil, and from that celestial rift slowly descended the figure of the Virgin Mary, enveloped in a pale blue mantle, with tears falling like burning pearls. Her eyes, oh, her eyes, contained all the love and all the pain of the universe. There was no anger on his face, only infinite sadness. And while millions watched from different parts of the planet, a voice was heard that didn't come from any physical place. It was a voice that spoke to the soul. "My children, the earth is sick with sin. They have exchanged truth for deception, light for darkness. But there is still hope for those who kneel before God and cry out for mercy." At that moment, the tremors began. The mountains breathed as if they were alive. The oceans roared. In the cities, buildings shook, lights went out, clocks stopped. The entire planet seemed to be taking its last breath. From Rome to New York, from Mexico to Jerusalem, the same phenomenon was repeated. A light descended from the sky in the form of a luminous cross. Some fell prostrate weeping, others fled in terror. But there was nowhere to hide from the message the heavens were sending. And in the midst of the chaos, an elderly priest, his voice breaking and his hands trembling, cried out in a small chapel, "This is the warning that Mary spoke of in Garabandal. The soul of the world is being shown before God." And so it was. Each person, regardless of their religion, race, or age, began to look within themselves. Like a burning mirror of the soul, everyone was confronted with their sins, their decisions, their omissions, their love, and their indifference. There was no escape. Time stood still, the air turned to light, and the entire earth found itself facing the judgment of its own conscience. The scientists didn't understand anything. The satellites recorded an energy pulse emanating from the planet's core, but also from the sky. A double flow of unknown energy that defied the laws of physics. The networks collapsed. Communications were cut off, and silence once again reigned supreme. Then the Virgin spoke again. "I have come not to condemn, but to warn. What begins today is irreversible. Whoever seeks refuge in my immaculate heart will be protected. Whoever closes their heart will know the fire of purification." His words were like swords of light that pierced the soul. And as the planet trembled, a vision was projected in the sky, the world map covered in flames. But among those flames, 3 points remained illuminated: a shrine in Fatima, another in Medjugorje, and one more in Mexico. It was the last call. The air began to vibrate. The sun turned black for a few seconds. A roar came from the ocean, and a gigantic wave covered the Pacific coast. The whole planet screamed. Human suffering rose like a cry that shattered the heavens. And suddenly, silence. An absolute calm covered the earth. The survivors, weeping, looked to the sky, waiting for a sign. And then a white dove appeared among the dark clouds, carrying in its beak a small golden flame. It was the symbol, the last message before the great change. Children of the world, this is the hour when everything will be revealed. Darkness will fall, but after it will come the dawn that knows no end. The earth, exhausted, began to shine with a new light. It was as if the planet, after weeping, had been washed by divine mercy, but not everyone understood. Some clung to fear, others to faith. And so began the separation that Mary had prophesied. Those who would choose the light, and those who would prefer the darkness. The sky, now open, continued to watch, and the virgin's voice, growing ever softer, faded away like a sigh in the wind. He who has ears, let him hear. He who has a heart, let him feel. Because time is no longer time. For hours, or perhaps days, because time no longer obeyed human rules, the entire planet remained motionless, suspended in a calm that did not belong to this world. There was no noise, no wind, no birds, only the feeling that something invisible was walking among the men, examining their hearts, weighing their souls. And then the fire started. Not a fire that destroys, but a blue, transparent, almost liquid fire. It descended from the sky like a luminous rain, enveloping mountains, seas, forests, and cities. It didn't burn the flesh, it burned the soul. It was the final purification, the fire of the Holy Spirit, the same one that Mary had announced in countless apparitions. A time will come when heaven will send its fire to purify what has been corrupted. Those who carried hatred felt it burning inside their chests until it transformed into tears. Those who lived in lies saw the truth reflected before them like an unbreakable mirror. And those who had truly loved, those who prayed in silence, those who offered their pain as a sacrifice, they did not burn, they shone. In every corner of the planet, columns of light rose up. People of all ages were enveloped in blue fire and began to sing in unknown languages. It was an ancient heavenly chant, a melody that no human mouth could have learned. It was the choir of the Renaissance. Meanwhile, in Medjugorje, the apparition mountain was completely illuminated. The Virgin's face was projected onto the sky like a living dawn. Tears of light flowed from her eyes and fell upon the earth like stars. And her voice was heard, as close as a whisper next to the heart. I have prayed for you for centuries. I have interceded before the throne of the Most High, so that this moment would be one of mercy, not destruction. But know, my children, that the world you knew no longer exists. Humanity has crossed the threshold. Now begins the great separation. And as he spoke those words, the blue fire began to divide places and people. There were houses that remained intact, resplendent, while those next door slowly disintegrated into luminous dust. It wasn't punishment. It was cleansing. The blue fire recognized what was of God and what was not. The dry trees were blooming. The river water became crystal clear. The air was filled with a fragrance that no one could identify, a mixture of incense, rain, and tears. In the big cities, the survivors looked at each other, speechless. Some knelt in the streets, others raised their arms to the sky, begging for forgiveness. And above them, a light descended gently, marking on their foreheads a small, luminous sign, a cross of blue fire. That mark was the seal of the protected. But at the other end of the world, where darkness still reigned, shadows began to take shape. There were places where the light could not enter. These were the corners where hatred, pride, and greed had taken deep root. There the blue fire transformed into red fire, burning, purifying in its pain. And humanity understood, too late for some, that fire did not come to destroy, but to separate what was to be reborn from what was to die. An old man in Jerusalem looked up to heaven and said, "This is what the prophets called the day of the Lord, not a day of terror, but of truth, for no one can hide their soul from the light." And as his words echoed, the entire planet began to vibrate with a new pulse. The Earth's axis shifted slightly. The seas receded for a moment, and then gently returned. It was as if the world had been restarted from its own heart. At that moment, men understood that the purification was not the end of the world, but the end of the old world. The power structures began to fall, governments crumbled, economies collapsed, armies threw their weapons to the ground. The blue fire not only burned away sin, but also the lies upon which civilization had been built. And then the Virgin spoke once more, her voice echoing in every living soul. "I have wept for you, my children. I have walked in your deserts, I have stood by your beds of pain, I have touched your tears. But now listen well, from the ashes a new world will be born. It will not be ruled by gold nor by force, but by pure love. You will be the witnesses of the dawn of the kingdom. Mary's tears now fell upon the entire planet. Where they fell, green shoots, new flowers, and living water sprang up. The animals came out of their hiding places, the skies cleared, and the air smelled of eternity. It was the rebirth of creation, and the blue fire kept falling, but it didn't hurt anymore. Now it was warm, like a hug. It was the Spirit of God dwelling in everything. The children looked up at the sky and said, "She's smiling again." And indeed, Maria was smiling. A smile so pure, so full of compassion, that the whole planet began to spin gently again, as if the universe itself breathed a sigh of relief. But amidst that beauty, a final warning lingered, like a bell in the soul of the world. Do not forget what you have seen. Do not fall asleep again, for the enemy does not rest, and a time of apparent peace will come before the final battle. The blue fire rose, forming a great spiral that ascended towards the sky. And when it disappeared, a new light bathed the earth, the light of a dawn that had never existed before. After the blue fire, the world seemed suspended between two breaths of the Creator. There were no more tremors, no more signs in the sky, no more messages descending from the heavens, only a deep, immense silence that enveloped humanity like a veil. It was the silence of God. At first, many believed that it was all over. The rebuilt cities shone with a new purity, the rivers sang once more, and hearts were filled with hope. But those who had felt the blue fire knew that this peace was not the end. It was the interval before the final test. The Virgin Mary had warned, "A time of calm will come, but it will not be true peace. It will be the sigh before the storm, the rest that the enemy will use to disguise himself as light." For weeks the men searched for Maria's voice in the wind, in the temples, in the sacred mountains, but the sky remained silent. There were no apparitions, there were no messages, there were no signs. And then the real challenge began. Faith without comfort. The communities that had survived the blue fire gathered every night to pray, but soon doubt began to seep in like an invisible smoke. "Why is God silent?" some asked. "Has he abandoned us?" Others responded, "No, he is watching us silently to see if we still love him without miracles." It was at that time that the messenger reappeared, not with light or glory, but as a simple man, covered with the dust of the roads. His voice, however, retained the firmness of one who has heard what others cannot hear. He gathered the people on a plain lit by a white moon, the same moon that had bled days before, and he said, "Do not fear silence. The sky is silent to test the truth of their hearts. This is the time when every soul will be weighed on its faith. Don't look for signs outside, because now the signs live within you." Those who heard those words felt a tremor in their chests. It was as if Mary's presence was still there, silent, watching, testing the faithfulness of her children. But soon, illusions began. In different parts of the world, men and women emerged claiming to have new visions. They promised instant cures, riches, and spiritual power. They used sweet words, images of light, and pronounced the name of God with cold lips, and many followed them. The messenger warned, "The false shine has arrived. Whoever has not purified their heart in the blue fire will be deceived by this false light." The enemy disguises himself as a savior when the world seeks hope. In the temples, the ancient images began to disappear. Some said that a new universal faith was being born, one that would unite everyone under one name, one leader, one spiritual banner. They promised a world without wars, without differences, without the need for the cross or prayer. But the messenger recognized the deception, and he shouted, "That doesn't come from heaven," because true peace never renounces the truth. God's love does not eliminate the cross, it transforms it. Little by little, the communities began to divide. Some remained faithful to Mary's silence, praying every night with a lit candle, waiting for her return. Others, unable to bear the absence, surrendered themselves to the new movement of light that promised a paradise without suffering. It was then that something happened that shook the planet, the second blood moon. At midnight on the 6th day of the month, the moon turned red again, but this time its glow was not fiery. It was dark, deep, almost opaque, and in the center of its surface appeared a shadow that many interpreted as a human face. Scientists could not explain it. The believers knew it. Mary's warning was not over. At that moment, in the hearts of the humblest faithful, the elderly, children, the sick, a voice was heard. It was not a voice that came from heaven, but from within. Stand firm. Do not fear silence. I am with you, even though you cannot see me. Where a candle remains lit, there I will be. That night, millions of people around the world lit a candle in their homes. It was a wave of light, a silent chain stretching from the mountains of Colombia to the streets of New York, from the villages of Mexico to the deserts of Israel. The planet, seen from space, seemed to be covered in small living fires, breathing faith. But as that light spread, the enemy also moved. A new leader emerged, promising to restore order, bring abundance, and heal the wounds of the past. Her face was kind, her voice soft, her power magnetic. Crowds cheered him, the media called him the peacemaker. But the messenger, seeing this, fell to his knees. "The false lamb has spoken," he murmured, "and many will continue to believe that he is the one sent." That was the sign. The real battle would no longer be between nations, but within the soul of each person. Humanity had passed from blue fire to silence, and from silence to the deception of light. Faith would be tested as never before, and the voice of the Virgin would be heard again only in the hearts that did not allow themselves to be contaminated. The messenger looked up at the sky, and a tear fell down his cheek. I knew that Maria's time was not yet over. It was only hidden behind the veil of divine silence. And while the world celebrated its false peace, a new sign began to form on the horizon. A glow over the sea that seemed to beat like a heart. "When that heart shines fully," said the messenger, "the true face of the battle will be revealed." It was midnight of the 7th day. The world slept, tired of its own false promises, while a glow was silently born over the waters of the Atlantic. It was not fire, nor storm, nor reflection. It was a pulsating light, like a living heart beating from the bottom of the ocean. Each pulse sent a vibration that reached the shores of the 3 countries warned by Maria, the United States, Colombia, and Mexico. The messenger, who had been in solitary prayer for weeks, felt the first pulse like a tremor in his chest. He fell to his knees, looked up and saw the horizon tinged with deep blue, with golden flashes dancing on the waves. He realized that it was neither an illusion nor a natural phenomenon. It was a living manifestation, a divine language that only pure hearts could understand. "My heart has awakened," he murmured, "and with every heartbeat, Judgment Day draws nearer." Off the coast of Florida, fishermen working in the dark saw the sea light up for a few seconds, and fish emerged confused, as if an invisible presence was attracting them. In Cartagena, Colombia, the glow appeared reflected in the port water and left floating a luminous silhouette that looked like a woman with a spread cloak. And on the beaches of the Mexican Pacific, witnesses claimed to have heard a song in the wind, a chorus of female voices repeating a single phrase, "The heart beats because time is running out." News outlets around the world began broadcasting images. "An inexplicable phenomenon," the scientists said. "Marine light disturbance," the websites headlined. But those who knew the prophecies of the Virgin Mary knew that it was the sign of the heart of the world, the prelude to the final warning. That night, The messenger spoke to the faithful gathered in a hidden valley where telephones did not reach, and only the whisper of the wind could be heard. Her voice trembled, but not from fear, but from the force of what she had to reveal. The light you see is not a threat, but a call. Mary has allowed the heart of the world to awaken before man destroys it with his own pride. Every heartbeat that rises from the sea is a plea for humanity to love again, to pray again, to believe again. The crowd fell to their knees. Some were crying. Others, still incredulous, raised their phones to the sky, seeking to record the invisible. But the messenger warned them, "Don't record with your cameras, record with your soul." Because this light cannot be captured with technology. It can only be seen with a pure heart. And that's when something even more profound happened. For a few moments, the glow took on a clear form, a radiant female figure with a heart on her chest, floating above the waves. His face wasn't fully distinguishable, but his gaze felt like a burning caress. It was she, the mother, observing the world with tenderness and sadness. An elderly man from Veracruz who witnessed the vision later said, "He didn't speak with words, but I understood that she was crying for us, and each of her tears became a star that fell into the sea." The messenger stood up and shouted, "Mother, don't go away! Your people are not ready yet." Then a gentle voice, the same one heard in the days of the blue fire, answered within her heart, "I haven't left, my son." But before the heart stops beating, the world must decide to whom its soul belongs. Those words left him breathless. I knew that what would come next would no longer be a warning, but the fulfillment. At dawn, the glow was still visible from all three countries. The media spoke of a global light that seemed to communicate with the lunar cycle. Some associated it with the mysterious blood moon that would soon return to stain the sky in November. But the spiritual sages, those who had followed Mary's messages for years, understood the radiance was the final pulse of the world's heart, and when it ceased to shine, the judgment of the nations would begin. The messenger gathered his community again and revealed something no one expected. During the night, as he gazed at the sea, a word burned in his mind like fire. Colombia. The heart spoke, he said, and his first warning was for Colombia. Their land will be shaken not by fire, but by division. Children will fight against children, faith will be tested, and only those who remain united under the name of Mary will survive the chaos. The message spread quickly. From Bogota to Medellin, believers gathered in prayer. Lit candles illuminated squares, churches, and homes. And a new wave of conversions began to emerge, as if the soul of a people were awakening. But the messenger knew that was only the first heartbeat. 2 more were missing, and each one would be stronger, more painful, more revealing. The heart of the sea would continue to beat until the 3 countries heard the call. And when the last pulse died away, the moon would bleed for the last time. Before leaving that night, the messenger left one final warning. The second heartbeat will come with the moon and will touch a powerful land where pride is mistaken for faith. And everyone understood that he was talking about the United States. The night of the second heartbeat arrived without warning, without visible signs in the sky, without thunder or storms. But in the profound silence that enveloped the cities of the United States, something began to stir in the unseen. It was not the roar of the earth nor the roar of the sea. It was a spiritual void, a silence so overwhelming that many felt as if the world were holding its breath. The streets of New York seemed normal, but a strange glow was reflected in the glass of the skyscrapers. In Texas, the wind blew without direction, and the trees bowed as if in prayer. And in Washington, D.C., where the nation holds its power and pride, a shadow fell across the sky at noon, turning the sunlight into a cold, metallic hue. The messenger, who had returned from his retreat by the sea, sensed the change. He had spent the last few days fasting and praying, waiting for the second heartbeat of the world. When silence descended upon the country, he fell to his knees and understood, the heart has begun to beat again. Mary showed me that the first heartbeat would touch the humble people, but the second would shake the empire of pride. And when the most powerful nation falls to its knees, the whole world will know that neither money nor science can stop divine justice. That same afternoon, inexplicable reports began to circulate. Communication towers suddenly went dark. Satellites were losing contact. Millions of people claimed to have felt a weight on their chest, as if something invisible were pressing on them from the inside. In hospitals, doctors recorded simultaneous spikes in anxiety, nervous breakdowns, and sudden fainting spells. And the most unsettling thing, nobody was dreaming. That night, millions of Americans closed their eyes without being able to enter the world of dreams. It was as if heaven had closed the doors of the human mind so that they could finally hear the message of the soul. The messenger then received a vision. An immense hand of light descended upon the continent and rested upon a huge dome. From that hand fell 3 tears that transformed into 3 rays, one white, one red, and one black. White touched the north, red the center, and black the south, and a voice resounded deep but full of maternal love. Those who built with pride, they must rebuild with humility. Those who worshipped power, they will know fragility. And those who forgot my name, they will pronounce it through tears. The messenger understood that the voice was that of the Virgin Mary, the same one who had wept over the waters days before. But this time, she wasn't crying from pain. She wept with hope. Because he knew that through the brokenness, an entire nation would once again look to heaven. Meanwhile, in different cities, testimonies began to emerge. A nurse in Seattle said she saw a blue light flash across the intensive care unit just before a dying patient opened his eyes and said, "She is here. She walks among us." In Florida, a commercial pilot reported seeing a luminous female figure over the Atlantic Ocean holding a burning heart. And in Arizona, a group of children claimed that a lady from heaven visited them in a dream and told them, "Do not fear if the night grows long. When the heart stops beating, a new dawn will come." The media tried to rationalize everything. They said they were collective hallucinations caused by social tension, that the silence of the sky was an atmospheric phenomenon caused by solar waves. But deep down, many knew that something bigger was happening. It was the second heartbeat, the direct call to a nation that had become a symbol of power and oblivion. For 3 days, the temples remained open day and night. Social media was filled with prayers, confessions, and supplications. Families who had not prayed for years began to do so again, holding hands. Fear slowly transformed into an echo of faith. The messenger, from his small sanctuary in the mountains, then received a new message. A light descended before him, and Mary's voice, sweet but firm, said, "The second heartbeat has touched the giant, but his heart has not yet awakened. When the moon turns blood red, men will see what they refuse to see, and the final warning will fall upon the land I have loved most." The messenger wept. He knew what that meant. The third and final heartbeat would manifest itself in the land of the devout heart, in the people who always carried Mary on their lips, Mexico. But before the final fulfillment, something extraordinary happened. A purple aurora began to sweep across the skies of North America. It was not a polar phenomenon. It did not correspond to any known solar activity. It was a curtain of living light that moved to the rhythm of the 3 heartbeats of the sea. Scientists dubbed it the dawn of silence. But the believers knew what it was. A sign from heaven, a veil between the visible and the invisible. That dawn stopped right over the Gulf of Mexico, and there it remained, suspended, shining like a divine breath, awaiting the final call. The messenger gathered his community once again. Everyone's eyes reflected the violet glow of the sky, and he spoke, his voice breaking but full of conviction. "Brothers, The second heartbeat has ended. The heart of the world is about to stop, and when it does, the great dawn will begin. Maria told me that the next call will be the strongest, the most painful and the most beautiful of all, because it will happen in the land where she was crowned queen. There was silence. All that could be heard was the whisper of the wind and the heartbeat of the souls of those present. Then the messenger raised a lit candle to the sky and said, "When the moon turns blood red, the heart will reveal its last secret. And that secret is kept in Mexico." The crowd shuddered. Some fell to their knees, others began to cry. An elderly woman from Oaxaca raised her rosary and shouted, "Holy Mother, do not abandon us." And then the wind blew with supernatural force, causing all the candles to go out at the same time. Only one remained lit, the messenger's. The flame flickered, but it did not go out. "As long as this light burns," he said, "Mary will remain among us." That night, the eyes of the world were on Mexico. The sky slowly began to turn red, and the sea, the same sea that had throbbed days before, shone again. But this time the light did not come from the bottom of the ocean. It came from the sky, as if a new dawn were descending to touch the chosen land. The clocks read exactly 11:11 at night when a white figure appeared on the Mexican horizon. She was tall, radiant, with a cloak that moved in the wind, and in his hands he carried something that looked like a heart wrapped in golden fire. The messenger understood that the moment of the third and final heartbeat had arrived. The moon turned a deep red over Mexico. It was no ordinary phenomenon. It was the blood moon that Maria had announced in her messages, and its brilliance illuminated every mountain, every valley, every city. The air was heavy with silence, a silence that made each breath sound like a drum marking the final time. The messenger was at a viewpoint near Oaxaca, where the mountains embrace the sky and the horizon seems infinite. He had traveled for days to get there, following the instructions that Maria had dictated in dreams and visions. Upon arriving, he found a group of believers who had traveled difficult paths just to witness the sign. They looked at each other with tears in their eyes and realized they were in the right place at the right time. Suddenly, a golden glow emerged from the top of a nearby mountain. It was not a rising sun nor a reflection. It was a light that seemed to breathe, that expanded and contracted like a living heart. The messenger felt the first heartbeat in his chest, and then he heard a deep, muffled sound, as if the earth itself were speaking. "Maria has opened the heart of Mexico," he murmured, "and what is about to be revealed will change all those who see with the eyes of the soul." The light began to take shape. A female figure emerged above the summit with a white cloak that moved with supernatural grace. In his hands he held a heart enveloped in bright fire, and each heartbeat was felt in the air as a vibration that went through body and spirit. The messenger knelt, trembling, and began to recite aloud the words that Mary had taught him. "Mother of light, protect your people, guide those who doubt, strengthen those who tremble, and do not turn your gaze from us." Those present felt that every word resonated throughout Mexico and beyond its borders, reaching even those who had never heard of these prophecies. As the heart of fire beat, visible miracles began to occur. In Mexico City, candles in homes began to light themselves, illuminating rooms in a warm glow. In Guadalajara, patients who had been bedridden for years felt immediate relief. Some were able to stand up without help. In Puebla, angelic singing was heard that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the churches, filling the air with peace and reverent awe. The messenger knew that the manifestation was not only spiritual, it was both a warning and a gift. The heart of fire represented both the strength that Mexico had to recover and the purification it had to undergo to protect the world. However, Maria had one last message. The revelation was not just for Mexico, but for everyone who would listen. Her voice, though soft, was clearly heard in the heart of every person present. The time has come. Those hearts that are prepared will survive. Those that are not will learn too late. Keep the faith, pray without ceasing, and protect your families with the strength of divine love. For the world will change, but those who remain united under my protection will find refuge in the heart of heaven." The messenger then instructed those present, "Don't talk about fear, talk about faith. Don't seek fame, seek unity. And when you return home, take care of your loved ones and pray together every night, because true protection begins in the family." Just before dawn, the figure of Mary began to slowly rise into the sky, carrying with her the heart of fire. Each final heartbeat resonated in the air like an eternal echo. Witnesses fell to their knees, weeping and giving thanks for having witnessed the last and final heartbeat. The messenger realized that his work was not finished. He had to record everything, transmit every detail, and prepare those who had not yet seen the light. He knew the world needed a spiritual refuge, and that prayer and faith would be the most powerful weapons against the coming chaos. Before bidding farewell to the faithful, he gathered them one last time and delivered an urgent message. Remember, what you have witnessed is a privilege. Not everyone will see the heart of fire. Protect your families, pray, and take this message to those who still sleep in ignorance, because judgment is not just an act of destruction, but a call to awaken. The time for preparation has arrived. The last rays of golden light disappeared with the dawn. The sky returned to its usual blue, but the hearts of those present remained ablaze with the fire that Maria had ignited. Dawn bathed Mexico in a soft, golden, almost magical light. The witnesses of the heart of fire returned to their homes, their eyes still moist and their hearts beating to the rhythm of what they had witnessed. Each one knew that they had been part of a miracle, that they had seen what many would never understand. But the messenger knew that his most important task was not yet finished. He had to unite all those present in an act of faith and protection, uniting each family under the mantle of Mary. She gathered everyone in a circle and began to speak in a firm but loving voice. "Brothers, sisters, what we have witnessed is not by chance. The Virgin has shown us signs, given us warnings, and above all, given us hope. Now, it is our duty to protect our families, teach our children to walk in faith, and remain united in prayer. The miracle doesn't end today. The true preparation of the heart begins today." Then the messenger invited everyone to close their eyes and join in a prayer that would resonate beyond the ends of the earth. A prayer of protection, strength, and divine love. "Most Holy Mother, Virgin Mary, Queen of heaven and earth, today we come before you with humility and faith, aware of our fragility and the greatness of your love. We ask that you cover each family present here with your mantle, protecting it from all evil, from all danger, and from any shadow that tries to disturb the peace of their homes. Bless the parents, that they may be a guide and example. Bless the children, that they may grow with a pure heart. Bless the elderly, that they may receive comfort and strength. Envelop their homes with celestial light, so that no darkness can penetrate. Guard their paths, accompany their dreams, and ensure that faith never fades in their hearts. Deliver them from illness, accidents, disasters, and temptations that lead them away from good. May every tear be gathered by your love, every fear be turned into courage, and every day be filled with your presence and divine guidance. May the strength of your mother's heart descend upon every table, every door, and every window. May prayer and hope be the family's shield, and may unity and love prevail over any adversity. May peace reign in their homes, may joy be constant, and may their spirit be strengthened in the face of any storm. We ask you, Virgin Mary, that your light may shine permanently upon our paths. May each family gathered here become a beacon of faith and love, radiating your mercy to all those around them. Protect those we love, even those who do not yet believe, because your grace touches everyone without distinction, and your love transforms hearts. We promise to walk in your light, listen to your signs, and pass on your message. May each day be a step towards holiness, each decision guided by your wisdom, and each word inspired by your peace. With your protection, no evil can separate us or our families. With your blessing, we will always be safe, united, and strengthened. Holy Mother, may your heart illuminate our nights and our mornings. May your presence accompany us at every moment, and may your love be the pillar of our home. We ask this with humility, with faith, and with the certainty that your gaze never abandons us. Amen. Upon opening their eyes, those present felt a profound calm, a peace that went beyond the physical. It was as if the Virgin herself were walking among them, embracing each soul, cleansing each fear, filling each void with her unconditional love. The messenger concluded with a final message. Brothers, remember that what you have seen and felt is a gift, an opportunity to prepare, to strengthen their faith and to protect their loved ones. Never forget this night. Keep prayer alive in your homes and share this message with those who still need to hear Mary's voice. The Heart of Fire has taught us that true protection begins in the family, and that the love of our Heavenly Mother is always with us. As the sun rose over Mexico, each family felt a new flame in their heart, a certainty that faith and love were more powerful than any adversity. And so the series of signs, warnings, and miracles concluded, with hope, protection, and an eternal bond between heaven and earth.